Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India. Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste. In this session we will discuss about multiple generations at workplace. After this session you should be able to recognize the multiple generations at workplace, identify the prominent features of different generations, appreciate the issues and challenges for different generations, particularly pertaining to their behavior at work, and we will also interrogate the best ways of engaging various generations at workplace. Why we should bother about this topic? Why to study intergenerational relationship in organizations? Very first and basic reason is that probably first time in the history in the large organizations we are having 3 or 4 generations of the people working together. Different generations grow up at different times, naturally that affects their psychographical profile, and that happens to be different from each other, and any kind of difference in the worldview or approach reflected in the psychographic profile is bound to result into some altercation or misunderstanding. So, we need to recognize that in order to respect the diversity across the generation, we need to understand the generations and appreciate the strength and the limitations of each generation. So, we need to recognize that different generations respond differently to different organizational or HR practices like talent management, employee engagement, etc. So, that is why we need to study generations closely. Transferring firm specific knowledge and skill from the retiring employee to the new job incumbent is one of the very important challenges and activity of HR function and function of the overall organization. If we wish to enhance the effectiveness of the knowledge transfer across the generations, we need to study the generations more carefully. A 2005 study conducted by Accenture found that at least 45% of the respondent organizations think that they are failing, they are not doing the workforce knowledge transfer very efficiently. Nature of the task to be conducted at workplaces are also becoming more and more complex. With more and more complexity, you have more and more specialists working in teams which bring complementary skills. Because of the increasing complexity of task, naturally in a team multiple people will be coming from multiple generations. So, the tasks like robotics or biomedical research or digitization, they are multidisciplinary in nature. Not only multidisciplinary, they involve multiple generations of technology as well, and because of that different generations are comfortable with different kinds of technologies involved in a particular project, and that is why we need to understand how different generations respond to different stimulants, how their psychographic profile are similar or different. Lack of engagement at workplace is almost like a pervasive problem. We discussed in the session on employee engagement that more than 70% of employees at workplace worldwide, according to the surveys published by Gallup, are not fully or well engaged at workplace. One of the reasons for the lack of engagement is poor communications across generations. In order to address this issue, we need to study generations more carefully, we need to understand the generations more carefully. Comfort with technology, preference for leadership style, different response to different issues are natural ways of expression of the generational differences. Generations have to be understood in context of these particular types of stimuli. Asia Pacific region has world's most positive view about generational diversity, with 44% respondents are confident that it contributes to workplace productivity. This may be related to the cultural profile of these countries as well, because in these countries, so in these cultures old age also commands respect naturally. Nonetheless, as we discussed in the previous session, diversity enhances the productivity, innovation, creativity. Multiple generation is one of the aspects of diversity, and that is also likely to enhance the productivity, innovation and efficiency of organizations and the teams if we manage the multiple generations carefully. What do we mean by generation? Definition, basic definition of generation means two essential components. Number one, it is common, it has a common location in historic time period. So, they are related to a particular time period, and second, they have a distinct consciousness as a result of the important event during that time period. So, these two factors shape generations. Generations are built on identity. Identity can come in an organization, can come because of the entry in the organization of people in a particular time, and that is called cohort based identity. Identity can come from the natural age of the employees, so that brings the age based identity. Identity can also come from my belonging to a particular community. It is based on my kinship, and based on the kinship we can have incumbency based identity. Generations are chronologically linked, generations are not watertight compartments, generations interact with each other. So, there is a transmittive characteristics across the generations. Multiple source of identities work in the organization. Organization are the places where identities emerge from multiple sources, and a particular identity can be provoked at certain point of time based on organizational clues or external events. Generally, we understand generations by the four terms: baby boomers, generation X, generation Y and generation Z. Baby boomers are those who were born between 1945 to 1960. Think about the time period of 1945 to 60. This was the time period of the post World War II. World was changing very fast. The power equation, the source of power, the major power was shifted from Europe, was shifting from North Europe to USA. This is the time when many countries were going through a major nation building process. That is the generation which values legacy. They wish to leave legacy. They are the doers, and they love to leave legacy. It is very important for them, for their identity. They think in terms of words, because that was the time when most of the official communication used to happen, most of the formal official communication used to happen through words, and particularly the written words. Radio was the most prominent medium, and office memo, the picture of the typical office memo is also given here. That tells about the importance of word, particularly the written words, and their importance in the communication, exchange of the ideas and making decisions was very important. So this generation is the generation of doers, those who love to leave legacy, and they use words and power of conversations, particularly long conversations. They are good at argumentation and long conversations, and that is the major ways of their expressing their thoughts and their opinion. Generation X is followed by baby boomers. By the way, the baby boomer term comes from the major population upsurge happened during this period, during the post World War. The second generation, which is called Generation X, they were born between 1960 to 1980. They are the drivers, they are the people who have looked at the growth of the organizations, those who have seen organizations can grow beyond national boundaries. So they are independent, they are entrepreneurial, they are also the generation which have gone through the series of recession because of the cost pressures. They have also seen the major layoffs in the Europe and USA. So there is a sense of insecurity as well in this generation about saving money, about securing financial independence, because they have seen that layoffs and recession in their work experience at a mass level. Re-engineering and the retrenchment at the very large scale became a major feature of the corporate life during this time, during the time Generation X entered the workforce. Technology matters a lot for these people, because that is the time when the many technologies which were rudimentary in the previous decade became started getting commercialized, started resulting into different products. So technology and the power of technology became a major source of their confidence. That is one feature of Generation X. Generation X are the generation where the televisions became more prominent. So instead of words, pictures became more prominent ways of communication for the Generation X. Generation Y are action focused, because they are the generation which have extensively used internet in their day to day work. They are driven by the development, they are driven by the self esteem, they are okay to receive detailed instruction, but they love autonomy, they want to be left alone to complete the task, they value transparency, and this is the generation which has also seen the major financial debacle, subprime crisis, etc. So they are skeptical also about the corporate world, about the corporate life. They are more liberal generation in comparison to their previous generations. Generation Z comprises of the people born after 2000. They have grown up with technology, So you might remember when in the beginning of, since the beginning of the 21st century, if a child cries, many times parents would give them the electronic gadgets, even their cell phones. So they have grown up with the cell phone, they have grown up with the very audio visual electronic communication. They are the generation who have survived on YouTube, they are most active in the Instagram, technology is their soother. So they are dependent on, they search YouTube or Google for any information. They are not very comfortable with the long conversations because they are more habitual of the short videos present in YouTube. So these are the major characteristics of the different generations. This is the most popular generational typology. So there is a more detailed classification of the generation is also available, but we will follow little more kind of 4 or 5 stages of the generations which we are going to discuss. So just to remember, you can use this figure which talks about baby boomer. An exemplar is Bill Gates, the health, wealth, quality of life, these are their drivers, they are most careful about those things. Generation X are the anti of the conventions, traditions, they are busy, cynical, they are the generations which have looked at the organizations growing phenomenally beyond the national boundaries. Generation Y, they have grown up with technology, and Generation Z are the born digital generation. So this is just to remember what we just discussed a short while from. So this is just to have a quick recap of what we discussed in the previous slides. There are some other classification as well. For example, Hewitt has given its classification of the generation in terms of passionate advocates, enthusiastic follower, under rewarded supporters, disenchanted, unrealized potential, detractors. NESCOM has also used a different classification using the terms of freebirds, seekers, stabilizers, loyalists. American theorists have also used other terms other than what we just discussed. So these terms are depression era, World War II era, post war, leading edge boomer, trailing edge boomers, generation Xer, and Gen, etc. So there are different few other classifications of the generation. I would like to share with you Indian classification of the generation. As we discussed, generations are the result of being born at a particular time period and the events which, the major events which would have influenced the people who are born in that time period. So based on the research of Soundarya Rajesh and her colleagues, these 5 generations are identified. They call these veterans, free gens, Gen X, E Gen, and Gen Ys. So they have given the classification up till 1981 to 90, because this was given in the beginning of the 2010 decade, and generation up till this time actually entered at the workplace. Generation Z, which is called millennial in the other classification, did not enter the workplace when this classification was given, but we will see that the classification, the characteristic of Gen Z who are born in 2000 and they are the most recent entrant in the workplace, share quite a few characteristics which we discussed in the previous slide. Now we will look at this classification in a little more detail. So first generation of the Indian workforce, which who were born between 1945 to 1960, they constitute the 20% of the India's active workforce. Their entry into workforce happened during the 60s and 70s. Please think about what are the most defining moments during that time when people were growing up in the 60s in India. So that was the time of major food crisis in India. That was the time when green revolution just started. Invasion of the China was a major crisis of that time. East Pakistan was formed. This generation has seen East Pakistan being formed. Green revolution started in 70s. The nationalization became a major step which defined politics as well as economics. Emergency was imposed in the 70s. Akashvani was the major source of communication in India, major source of mass communication in India. Akashvani means the government sponsored, government supported radio channel of. So these are the important characteristics of the 60s when the free Jain was growing up. Thanks to many of these characteristics, we see some of the common attributes of the free generation. What is that? These attributes are like service orientation. So these are the people who are inspired by the idea of nation building, and this was the time period when this generation was growing up. Lot of conversation was happening around the socialism and various shades of socialism. So that has naturally affected their worldview about their role in the society, role of the politics in the politics and economics in the nation building. They are naturally relationship driven. They want to please their bosses because this is probably also is the hangover of the colonial past. They are found to be generally good team players, found to be uncomfortable in resolving conflict, found to be uncomfortable in the conflicting situation, little less assertive generation, give more importance to process than the result, and very sensitive to the feedback. So these are some of the characteristics being found by Sonia Rajesh and her team in this generation, and this study is based on large number of the focus group discussions and the interviews of the corporate leaders working in various industries. So next generation is generation X. Those who were born in between 1961 to 70. What are the defining moments for this generation? Those who were born in 60s, those who were born in early 60s, and they were growing up and started thinking about their surroundings, started making sense of the economic and political scenario when they are like 15, 20 years or 20 years old. They are the people in their, they were the people in their 20s in the decade of 80. That decade is remarkable in terms of the multiple shades of the socialism being discussed in India. That is also a time when the reservation was implemented, the caste based reservation in the educational system and the jobs actually enhanced. Mandal Commission recommendations were implemented. That is also a time when serious challenges were thrown to the Congress party. That was the time when India started growing little faster. So the late 80s were the slow period of the growth, the rate which is called the Hindu rate of growth. During this time the growth rate increased little bit. India was kind of getting acceptance as a nuclear power. This generation has seen that, and women in India made remarkable progress during this time. So that was the beginning of the recognition of women power in India. The major characteristic of the generation X are that they are adaptable. Probably the bureaucratic system of India and the license Raj of India was still there for this generation, and they had to maneuver their path in that scenario. So they are more adaptable, more pragmatic because the growth opportunity started during this time. Technology became, starting from the telephony to other technologies, became more prominent in the society. They are the creative generations, multitaskers. they are little aggressive in driving growth, and they value the self reliance. Gen E are the people who are born in the decade of 71 to 80, and that account for 29% of the workforce. This generation has very clearly seen the liberalization, globalization, fast economic growth when they were growing up, when they entered the workforce. In the late 90s, when India conducted the Pokhran atomic explosion, that was an incident where India was accepted after few months of this incident. So this is the generation which has looked at liberalization, globalization and fastest economic growth. In the 90s, India conducted the second atomic test in Pokhran at the time of the Prime Ministership of Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and within few months or years India was accepted as a responsible nuclear power. So this generation has seen the change of India being more powerful, more assertive, more promising country in terms of the economic growth. We will see the people who are born in this generation, many of them are now leading the corporations across the world, means Google, Microsoft, Stanchart, many organizations. There are at least 30% of the CEO of Fortune 500 companies are being led by India born leaders. So most of these people belong to Gen E. They have seen technological revolution. This is also a time when large number of students, large number of boys and girls coming from lower middle class or middle class families, with the thanks to the emerging recognition and power of India in the software industry, they started working in large number of multinational corporations. They went out of country and they have seen the financial economic prosperity which their parents have not seen. So this is the generation where people have seen the economic prosperity, particularly those people who, so this is the generation where people coming from lower middle class or middle class income group have seen the economic prosperity. So this is the time of the rising middle class and their global exposure. The members of this cohort, they value hard work and they believe that efforts in the right direction can bring result, because they are seeing those results. Lot of people of the Indian origin going to reaching to the very high level of the corporate ladder, so that gives that confidence. Gen E naturally have this attributes of growth orientation. Their global thinking became prominent, that started coming with more ease in this generation. They are more techno savvy. They have become more environmentally conscious, because this is the time when worldwide the conversation about the sustainable development became popular. They focus on education, because large number of people have seen the power of education, maybe as entrepreneur, maybe as a technology entrepreneur, maybe as technocrat. In all these categories, which are like major features for this generation, is based on the power of education. So they focus on education, they want a life. This is the generation which has become more conscious of work life balance. They hate micromanagement, they love autonomy. Gen Y or millennials. So Gen Y are the youngest amongst the formally employed members of the workforce, born between 1981 to 90. Their entry into the workforce was most recent, so they entered in 2000. It is estimated that they comprise of almost 26% of the total workforce. In some of the companies this percentage is much higher. and we are going to discuss about one of that company in the later part of this lecture. So, Gen Y women are seen no less than her male counterpart in terms of educational attainment and professional capability, because 42% of university graduates of this generation are women. Most liberal, most social media savvy generation is Gen Y or millennials. The attributes of the Gen Y are their love for flexibility. They are the first generation who have questioned the one question about the one stable job. They look at job as disposables as well. So, in this generation the emergence of the independent professionalism started, the independent professionals who provide their service based on their expertise to multiple employers. So, this disposable job phenomena started with this generation. Mostly they are skeptical about the corporate life, because they are the people who have seen the debacle of the corporate financial sector, or they have seen the subprime crisis. In general they are more techno brilliant, they carry the global mindset. This generation values diversity the most because of the global exposure, because of the liberal thinking. They have good taste in experimentation, and they are the people who wish to take risk, because their parents are much better off in comparison to the previous generation. So, that comfort provides them opportunity to be more experimental in nature. Their preference is to pursue portfolio careers and explore different avenues in the process. We will focus our discussion now on the 2 points, generation gap and unique contribution. So, based on our discussion on the different features, the specific features generally found in particular generations, we can see that generations vary according to their temperament, according to their worldview and their aspiration. So, what is the way out? Generation gap is a natural thing, but generational intergenerational communication is also a reality that also happens. In that communication we can create a synergy across the generations, and that is the reason why this topic is being discussed in the HR course. We also need to recognize that different generations at workplace not only bring differences, they also bring unique contribution, but that unique contribution can become organizational advantage, can give competitive edge to organization, can add to the productivity and efficiency of the organizations and institutions only if their unique contributions are acknowledged and synergized across the levels. So, now onwards in this session we will look at how to enhance the intergenerational communication and how to synergize the unique contribution and unique capabilities being brought by different generations at workplace. These are some of the ways of synergizing across generation. First is building collaborative relationship. Finest example of this method or this approach are the armed forces. In armed forces generally a lieutenant of the 20-year-old leads a group of Jawans and other armed forces professionals who are in their 40s, and that is happening. How they do it? They do it by showing the example, they do it by taking their opinion and respecting their opinion. So, this is first way of synergizing across generation. Another way is study the demography of the workforce to know what matters to the set of employees. If organization is deciding about financial incentive or non-financial incentive, they need to study the demography of their workforce, because different generations can value different type of financial rewards. For example, our old generation, the generation of baby boomer, may like to have a financial rewards in the monetary terms. They would like to have some tax saving, they would like to have some tax free incomes, because they are more in the saving mode to protect their retirement life. They probably value the healthcare facilities more than the holiday as incentives. But the young people may value cash to spend on their education, or they may value some holiday package which they can enjoy with their young families. So, different workforce, different part of the workforce may value different things, and they may value different kind of organizational rewards. Third way is to create opportunity to cross generational mentoring using mixed age teams. By making the mixed age team, we also create opportunity for the reverse mentoring. So, mentoring is understood to be a developmental conversation, the developmental relationship where mentor is like 2-3 level above than mentee. But in the cross generational mentoring team, even the young people can be the mentors of the old employees on various aspects, particularly technological aspects. Consider the life paths for facilities and the incentives. We discussed in the demography related point as well, that we need to study demography to understand what percentage of the workforce may value what kind of facilities and incentive, and accordingly customizing those for the workforce. Organizing wisdom talks, this is again Knight and Conley has suggested as an initiative. Wisdom talks means giving opportunity to the people in our organization irrespective of their hierarchy or their age to speak up front of everybody. So, some organizations follow this practice, this ritual of inviting one person, who generally the person who is not communicating across the organization, and giving them opportunity to speak up their mind about the work, about life, a few minutes. That can be a very useful initiative for people to understand each other, for generations to understand each other. Recognizing the wisdom workers, in every organization we can identify few people who have natural tendency to mentor others, who have natural tendency to articulate the worldview, communicate across generations. These people must be identified, and a systematic mentoring program can be set up in the organization, and that can be very useful in synergizing across generations. Creating employees resource groups, within the organization we can identify resource groups. That means group of people who are masters, who are expert in particular aspect, some aspect of technology, some aspect of legal requirements, some aspect of managing finances, etc. So, every organization can identify what matters to their employees at work and beyond work. Accordingly they can set up, they can identify the resource groups that can be communicated across the organization, and resource group can help other employees on certain aspects, some certain developmental aspects. These are the ways of synergizing across generation. I would like to quote a study conducted by McKinsey. which is based on 200 in-depth interviews with high potential young professionals and 60 with the talent professionals looking for ways to engage younger employees effectively. This question is important for India as well, because India is the home of large percentage of the very young employees. So, average age of the workers in India, average age of employees in India is 26 years. So, we can understand we need to have a better understanding about what young people value at work. So, that is why this is a useful study. It covers 120 companies, includes 55 of the Fortune 500. Sample primarily draws from the millennials in the United States, but that includes the multiple perspective, and 40% of the people who are sampled are immigrants from 40 different countries, and they are the first generation Americans. Based on this study, authors identify certain initiatives, certain ways of enhancing the intergeneration synergy. First is building bridge with data. Data is a very important source for insight. So, they give example of HubSpot. It is a marketing software company with recent IPO. They conducted a survey, mostly they have the millennials as their employees. They conduct a survey about the feeling of the employees, about the experience of the employees at workplace in every 90 days. And some anonymous micro feedback platforms are also being created, where millennials, which constitute the major portion of their, major means 80% of their workforce, they can take up a specific topic, they can engage in the follow up, they can ask for the feedback, and they can also give feedback anonymously on this platform. So, that is one way they have created the transparency and the communication across generations. Communication as such is a very important step in enhancing the intergenerational synergy. They give example of a company of WL Gores. They use this approach as a classic example. All new employees are assigned a sponsor who helps them to navigate the culture. This sponsor also helps them to reach out and form other mentoring relationship. It is based on the work interest and chemistry both. More recently, there is another company, Sodexo, many of us must have heard its name, they are famous for the food coupons. They began to test the mentoring circles of 4 people to help onboard new employee. So, at the time of onboarding itself, they have the 4, they identify the 4 mentors for this new employee. So, out of these 4, 3 happen to be experienced one, and 1 happens to be the newcomer one. So, that is a very interesting policy developed by Sodexo to enhance the communication across generation. Third way of enhancing synergy across generation, authors have identified in the McKinsey study, is culture of mentorship. So, they give example of Barclay. Barclay started up a young leaders resource group called Emerge. Its primary goal is to help companies' most recent hires accelerate their career through opportunities to develop skills. So, they help the employee through the informal group for employee to grow up in the organization and identify what are the capabilities this person has to build to grow up career wise in the organization. Organizations need to be creative about the professional growth. They need to create multiple opportunities to enhance the professional growth, and that is the another point identified in this study. Young workers tell us that they are energized by the rotational program. They want to move from one job to another, get as much exposure as possible about the functioning of organization. So, program at Synchrony Financial, another organization, and there are some other organizations also being mentioned in this article. They have expanded the traditional model to include increased mentoring, and they enhance the exposure to the senior leaders, cross functional work, community service, all these contribute to the professional growth of employee, and these initiatives are very much valued by the millennial workforce. Flexibility, as we discussed, millennials love flexibility, they love their autonomy, it is very important for them. One example they give is of the Netflix. They have instituted an unlimited parental leave policy, allowing employees to spend more time with their newborns and to choose return dates, balancing their responsibilities at home. So, for many organizations now are giving paid parental leave, and that is a very important initiative to keep the millennials engaged at workplace. Middle managers need to be developed as leaders. In many cases, middle managers belong to the generation before millennials. In order to work with the millennials and get best output from them at workplace, they need specific training. Denon and Citigroup are the two examples. Denon has created an innovative internal training program that brings together leaders of different generations, so that each can better understand how other works, and that helps them to surpass, get out of the stereotyping of the people about generations. Second example is of the Citigroup. In Citigroup, every manager has to undergo coach training program before working with an intern or participate in the rotation program, or to work with any other participant of the rotation program. This is considered as a recognition for the mentors as well, because this is the recognition of their mentoring capabilities. So, these are some examples where organizations shape the middle level managers into leaders. Now, we will look at example of an Indian company, TCS. This example is very useful for our understanding about the multi-generation engagement at workplace, is because the millennials and Gen Y, they constitute 70% of their workforce. So, in the worldwide that percentage might be 34, but it is more than double in the TCS BPO. So, Gen Y has already dominating the TCS BPO workforce. That meant the expectation in the workplace has already seen significant change. They have identified certain principles. Those principles are the basis of identifying the initiatives about intergenerational dialogue and engagement. What are those principles? Those principles are empowering associates at all levels, that is related to empowerment as well as transparency. Create a problem solving culture, help people to solve their problems, help the system to solve their problems. Encouraging decision making at lowest possible level, making the associates feel valued and build their trust in the organization, and provide a platform for employees to express their opinion and concern. These are the 5 principles are the foundation for TCS to enhance their intergenerational dialogue and engagement. So, based on these principles, many interesting initiatives are taken up by TCS HR. These initiatives are given different names like Propel, Catalyst Program, etc. Propel is the forum for managing change and taking ownership. So, that is about the new initiatives, new change process in the organization, and people can talk and have conversation, get information about these changes at this platform. There is a Catalyst program. The Catalyst program is where a nominated person from operations team goes through a structured program to become go-to resource among the operations team for people and policy related issues. So, this person is trained as catalyst, and this person other than HR becomes the go-to person for other team members. They are the resources which champion the HR cause from operation side. There is also a high pot program. This program is to augment the skills of high potential employees. This works as development as well as recognition program. There is a program with the acronym DAWN that enhances the diversity and inclusivity of all kinds. So, under the DAWN program, diversity initiatives are taken up for the different forms of diversity. Associate Connect program, that is a breakfast meeting, one-on-one connect and town halls with the senior most leaders of the organization. Coach Protege program. Coach Protege program is where senior leaders mentor and develop the high performers and solid citizens of the organization. Just Ask program. This is a social networking platform to act as an informal setting at work in order to network and to ask formal and informal questions. This is an interactive platform with the colleagues on matters of common interest, and that can be about finding a good paying guest in the nearby area to knowing about the certification program available in particular technology. So, we can see that multiple generations are working and they will continue to work at workplace. This can be looked at as a potential, this can provide the strength to the organization, provided synergy is created and more robust communication is established across the generations. There are certain principles each organization need to identify to enhance the synergy across the generation, and based on these principles, the principles related to empowerment, respect, acknowledgement, communication, going beyond stereotyping, based on these principles each organization has to identify their own initiatives. Right initiatives build on appropriate principles with the genuine concern to enhance the intergenerational communication will result into synergizing the talents across generation, as well as it will enhance the employee engagement.